So, hot off the heels of Resident Evil 2 Remake, Capcom have given us another chance to dive back into Raccoon City in this incredibly fast-paced reimagining of Resident Evil 3. Now, I say reimagining because this is a retelling of Resident Evil 3, and the story kind of cuts and adds wherever it pleases, and sometimes that's for the better, and sometimes that's for the worst. So let's talk about that first, shall we? On my first playthrough, I completed the game in 3 hours and 43 minutes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but at this price point, it really impacts on the value of the game. So I had an absolute blast playing it, and I searched for all the journals and all the different recordings and all the documents that I could, but it was still an incredibly brief experience, which is quite disappointing really, like I said, especially when you consider the launch price at the moment. So Capcom have attempted to pad it out by giving the players the option to play through it again and gain all the achievements, but considering the game only offers one path with no options, you know what, you're not going to impact the story, and it kind of makes it a bit pointless unless you're the kind of completionist person who just needs to get all of those achievements. You know, throwing Resident Evil Resistance as part of the multiplayer kind of should have been a warning sign for us all, and I'm disappointed to find there's no Mercenaries mode for the game, which would have been an absolute blast in the setting, considering you've got the streets of Raccoon City, the new gameplay. Mercenary mode would have been amazing, and it started off with Resident Evil 3 in the first place, so what a great place to bring it back, but alas, we don't get that. Putting aside how short the game was, how was it? So honestly, I preferred it versus Resident Evil 2 Remake, so please don't hurt me for that. And by the time I got to the end, I found myself wishing there was so much more to play. It was just an absolute great fun game. You're thrown in right at the deep end as the Nemesis comes crashing into Jill's apartment, and he just starts hunting you, and the place is burning down, and it is an absolute blast. And when you get out onto the streets of Raccoon City, it is masterfully captured, and the atmosphere is brilliant. Capcom really nailed it with this. So when the game starts out, you'll find a mass panic on the streets with mobs of people running around for their lives. You know, there seems to be zombies everywhere, but my one criticism with that is shortly after, that all just goes away. You've got all these civilians running, you've got these zombies breaking through and everything, but where do they go? You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, this outbreak, and it is so cool to watch it unfolding, and I just wish that they'd have spent a little bit more time on that. And what I mean is watching the civilians mingling with the zombies, it's all kind of unfolding, giving you maybe some tasks to rescue some of the civilians, but it doesn't. You kind of pass the first 5 minutes and suddenly all of that goes away, and the streets are mostly empty and you don't run into survivors or anything like that, and it's just a bit of a missed opportunity in my opinion. You'll find yourself ducking and diving to dodge attacks from the Nemesis, who is relentlessly hunting you. Now, you know, that brings me swiftly on to our big bad, the Nemesis, and honestly he looks great and experiences multiple transformations, but on the whole he's just a bit meh. You know, there's a small section near the start of the game where he starts hunting you, but the map is actually really small and it just all feels really scripted, and it's just disappointing. You know, leading up to the game's launch, we saw interviews about this is going to be a big sandbox type Raccoon City, and the Nemesis would be hunting you, and he'd be more like something from Alien Isolation, and that never happens. He's just scripted from the start. He appears and becomes just more of a nuisance than anything else, and eventually, after the first sort of interaction with him, he just becomes relegated to boss fight after boss fight after boss fight, and you end up in different arenas fighting him with stupid ways to kill him, and he's a massively missed opportunity, especially considering the first Resident Evil 3, they nailed the Nemesis, and this time round they really don't, and that's a shame. The two standout stars of the game, obviously, Jill and Carlos, and honestly, I love Jill in this iteration. The reimagining, she comes across as strong, she takes no shit, she absolutely shines through, and she was a blast playing. And then there's Carlos with the hair that, you know, this balding man here downright envies. He starts off as a cocky prat, but as the game progresses, he becomes a lot more likeable, and the chemistry between these two characters is, well, he's spot on. By the time I got to the end of it, I really found myself wanting to have another Jill and Carlos outing, and whether or not we'll ever get that, I don't know. We're doing remakes and reimaginings, so hopefully they'll do a little bit more. I guess we'll find out. So to sum up, I can't really recommend Resident Evil 3 at this price point. It's too expensive at the moment. They cut far too much from an already short game, and the little bits that they did add, they they were interesting. You know, we got to see Jill in her apartment at the beginning. She's been investigating Umbrella, looking about where all the different labs are, what's happening around the world. Why does she have to wait 4 days to leave Raccoon City? Who's she meeting up with? What's she doing? What's she been doing? Why is she just sitting around in her apartment as everything kind of explodes? They add parts into it, but they don't really expand on it. And that's a shame, because it seems as though Capcom are kind of trying to rein in some of the Resident Evil story here, because it does get wacky. And it would be really interesting to see what sort of direction they're going with some of these characters. But they cut far too much and add far too little, and it's a missed opportunity. So, you know what? Once this drops in price, you know what? It's definitely worthwhile getting. I had an absolute blast. But at 3 hours 43 playthrough for the first time, and I'm not a particular good gamer, any of you who watch me stream, you'll see me die more often than not. You know what, it's just not worth that full price, that initial launch price. So once it goes into a Steam sale, or you can pick it up in a bargain bin or something like that, it is definitely worth playing. But it felt more of an expansion to Resident Evil 2 Remake than anything else. It didn't do enough with its themes to kind of really expand it, and it cut far too much. It is far too short, and the replayability just isn't really there unless you are a completionist. So hopefully Capcom learn from that. You know, there's been a lot of outcry online about how short it is, and fingers crossed we don't get any remasters, reimaginings or remakes in the future that are this incredibly short, but I guess we'll find out. So overall, I absolutely loved the game. It was brilliant, and I would definitely recommend playing it, but only once that price comes down. The resistance mode added on as a freebie, it's not worth the entire package, unfortunately. But once it does come down in price, especially if you're a Resident Evil fan, it is certainly worthwhile checking out. So I really hope you've enjoyed the video today. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll be back soon. Ta-ra for now, and stay safe.